much for coming today to another Univirtual Experience event in partnership with the Virtual World Society and Educators in VR. We're honored to have this panel here and hoping that Alvin will join us shortly as well, if possible. Each of these people here have a lot to share with us this evening. I'm so excited about the conversations we're about to witness. Before we get started, just with the panel on the future of VR that Tom has assembled, I want to say a couple of words of thanks to, in particular, our Infinity sponsor, HP. Paul Martin here representing HP. Thank you very much. We have the Engage platform hosting and sponsoring the Univirtual Experience as well. We have Avantis Education, who make fantastic products and services as well. I wouldn't be surprised if, well, I would be surprised if Rupert's here. It's 4 o'clock in the morning for him. But also to our stellar sponsors, thank you to Grove XR, to the VR lady, Angelina Dayton, to Donna McTaggart of Let's Meet in VR. Donna is our event manager and director for the Univirtual Experience. She's amazing. Thank you to Frame VR and LearnBright platforms, and to the team of videographers, and in particular, Tony Cube Studios, who's filming here today. Thank you, Tony, for doing this. And with that, I'm going to hand over to my good friend, Tom. Take it away, Tom. Thank you. Are you muted, Tom? You may have to unmute yourself.
Okay, you hear me now?
There you go.
Yes. Okay, everything's well. Okay, thank you everyone for coming. It's wonderful to see this great group. By the way, Ian, my panelists, do you have your headphones turned on, because we're getting an amazing echo here. Do you have headsets on?
Just stay muted while you're not talking. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, that's probably the best, to stay muted while you're not talking. Okay, thank you. Thanks so much for coming. What a wonderful place this is. Daniel, thank you for staying up so late. What time is it there? You?
I think it's like 4 a.m.
4 a.m., I believe.
Yeah.
So that's really dedicating your body for the cause.
Nothing I'd rather be doing, though. Nothing I'd rather be doing.
Thank you, Daniel, for being here and taking care of us. We are expecting one more guest. Hopefully Alvin Graylin will be joining us soon. He's been having some difficulty getting from China to here, so we hopefully will see him before it's over. This is going to be a wonderful opportunity to just chat about the future. In particular, this amazing new technology that, well, it's not new, it's been around for a while. As I've been sort of working on it for 55 years. But we'll talk about some new things that are happening with the technology. But we want to sort of do it in a setting here by the beach. When Daniel and I spent a few days ago, we were looking for a venue or a combination of venues to hold this event. And, you know, I remembered the session with Jeremy Valenson. And I thought, hey, let's go to the beach. Because what this does is connect us with eternity. It connects us with the past. And what a peaceful place to be. And one of the things we need to basically answer ourselves as we go along is, why would we ever want to change this, what we already have? How do we think we can even improve on this? Because Mother Nature has done a wonderful job already. This is a place of peace. Place for us to think about where we will go, where humanity will go, where our civilization will go. I believe that we are at a turning point. What we call childhood's end, what Arthur C. Clarke calls the childhood end, where we have to grow up as a civilization and recognize how incredibly powerful, what the infinite potential that we all have, and how we can use that potential to make our lives better. Not that we're going to improve on Mother Nature that much, but certainly what's inside of us can improve and what we can bring out. to the world. Now, in order to address this, I wanted to assemble a panel of friends and colleagues. I felt we could have sort of a heart-to-heart chat. And you sort of are observers to that. Eventually, hopefully we'll have enough time to have a lot of interaction with you as our guest. But we're basically here to sort of chew the fat and from our various perspectives to talk about what we see as the future. Now, let me introduce who we have here. First of all, to my far left is Paul Martin. Paul is the VR technologist for Hewlett-Packard, and thank you again, Paul, for your organization in sponsoring, being one of the sponsors of this infinite sponsor of
course.
This event. And Paul, I'm sure
Pleasure.
you'll be telling a little bit more about yourself as we go along.
We've
Yes,
got Alvin has just joined us. There you go.
Alvin.
He's taking a seat.
Fantastic. Alvin, thank you for coming. It was a long journey, I know, for you, and glad you could be here with us. So, whoops.
Oh.
He'll
be back. Keep going. Yeah,
Okay.
keep going. He'll be back.
Okay. So, Paul, you'll tell us a little more about yourself and your background and things like that. And I'm going to ask some questions of the panelists here in a few minutes. To my immediate left is Joe Millward. Joe from Australia is the chief technologist at TAFE. He'll explain to us what that is. You have a lot of folks that you interact with in Australia using technology of the age. And then to my left, the immediate left, is Ryland Daniel. Ryland is a young man. He will tell you himself that he's around 19 years old. He's a university student, and but he's pretty amazing. I met him when he was 17, I think, to begin with, 16 or 17. And since that time, Ryland has won a Next Prize. It's awarded by the Virtual Society, which is the Spirit Award for doing amazing things as a young person and growing into going to be a major force in looking to the future. And I thought it would be wonderful to have Ryland's perspective of what he sees happening in the future. Then our last guest is Alvin Graylin. When Alvin shows up again, I'll introduce him certainly. So the first question I'm going to ask you, panelists, and here's, I think Alvin is back again. But let's start, Paul, with you. If you would give us a little bit of an introduction, and then also the question I'd like you to answer is, what did you want to be when you were a kid?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Paul Martin. I'm actually based in the U.S. in Colorado, a town called Fort Collins, which is the home of the HP workstation business, but we also have the VR division here as well. And I've been at HP for quite a long time, not as long as you've been at work, Tom, but I've been here for 36 and a half years now, and mostly doing high-performance computing kinds of things. I've been working on VR and AR kind of projects for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and had a great run at HP here. We just introduced a new headset, and where there's a lot of excitement on the team itself, but also on the industry about that. But in terms of what I wanted to be when I was a kid, I've always had, to be honest, a scientific or engineering kind of a bias. My father was a physiologist. He worked at University of Utah at the same time as Ivan Sutherland, as a matter of fact, and then out at Yale and actually in Melbourne, too, at Monash for a year when I was a kid. So he was always he was doing electrophysiology, so he always had electrical equipment such as oscilloscopes and some of the early digital equipment computers, so like the DEC, PDP-8 and PDP-12 and so forth he used to have, and I would go in at night and mess around with them. So from a young age, I've been really pretty fascinated with science and technology, and I've not veered much from that, to be honest. I've always wanted to be either a scientist or an engineer, and sometimes the twain meet, Mark. And So yeah, it's pretty much been it. It's been surprisingly monotonic in terms of what interests me. I'm also, I should say though, I'm also a musician. As many engineers are and computer scientists are, I play guitar and some keyboards and some local bands and so forth too. So yeah, try and mix things up a wee bit. So that's probably enough for me. But sure, of course.
Thank you. So, Joe, let's go to you next, and tell us a little about yourself and what you want to be as a kid.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm the innovation manager at TAFE New South Wales. We're the largest vocational training institute in the Southern Hemisphere. We've got 134 campuses and about 400,000 students, depending on the year. For me, I actually was trained as a classical dancer, so I was a ballet dancer. My parents are both trained dancers. But I was also an artist, so I was lucky enough to have parents that embraced all art. But my mother also happened to be a computer programmer, so I was able to see the opportunity of marrying art and computers and technology. I was inspired by Dragon's Lair, which was probably one of the first things I saw where it was true animation actually that was interactive. And I really thought that there was something there, and I didn't know where I wanted to go. So I trained as a 2D animator and taught myself to sort of do that, but then realized that technology was going to influence that all the time, and quickly.
Oh dear, I think we lost Joe for a minute.
We may be welcoming him back in a few moments.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and we'll go back to his mid-sentence.
Lovely.
And move over to, well, we've lost Alvin too. So let's go to Rylan. Rylan, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you wanted to be as a kid? Only a kid.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Tom. First of all, it's so great to be here. And thank you, Tom, for a wonderful intro. So, yeah, I mean, I am 19. I'm a VR, AR developer for about 6 or 7 years. I've been creating all sorts of stuff across medical and education and games and apps. And as Tom said, I was very honored to have received the Nextant Prize for a VR AR social impact by the Virtual World Society. And I was invited by Snapchat to create some AR lenses for their developer tools. And then I actually also, as an engineer, I also have a music background, and I was a fellow at the Los Angeles Philharmonic, where I composed different kinds of music for the orchestra at the LA Phil. And then I was also a contributor at the Los Angeles Times, writing about technology and really the latest trends in a VR AR across the industry. So I sort of have a foot across interactive future technologies across both the actual world building, but also music and writing. And kind of going off from that, I was always interested in world building as a kid. And also writing stories and actually writing about those worlds. And, I read Douglas Adams' A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the Siberiad by Stanislav Lem, and just kind of reading stories about amazing future worlds was a huge inspiration for doing world building. And I thought I'd actually be a writer, kind of writing about worlds, but it turned out maybe I could actually create those worlds actually in a virtual reality. So that's sort of how I see things and the future.
Wow. Well, Rylan, you have you're a student at the University of Southern California.
Yes.
And you're in really a special program there. Why don't you tell us what program that you're doing now and the kind of courses that you're taking?
Sure. Yeah. So I decided to pursue a course of study in a program at USC called the Jimmy Iovine and Young Academy for Art, Technology, and the Business of Innovation, and it is all about sort of to fuse product design and technology and computer science, and business and venture management and entrepreneurship to create innovations. And it was started by the founders of Beats, Dre, and it's sort of a fun, happy mixture of different creative disciplines that, you know, possibly could be the future of building the future of different kinds of innovations by combining those three disciplines.
Wow, that is so exciting. When Ryland was telling me about this, I thought, hey, that's really where I would like to go to school. What a wonderful combination of experiences that you're having there. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that as we go. Now, Alvin, are you back? Are you back to stay this time? We can't hear you.
His microphone is coming on and off.
Okay.
Let's give him a moment to settle. Do you want to pick up with Joe?
Oh, Joe's back. Okay, Joe. Now, we left you in mid-sentence. Now, we heard that you were a dancer. Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah,
so
I moved into the animation after...
sorry about the technical issues. I don't know what's going on, but...
I've been lucky enough to have, you know, the experience of understanding that technology, art, and all those things are going to combine. And obviously, Ryland's a classic example of seeing that, you know, extrapolated another 20 or 30 years since I've been to school. So, so for me, you know, I was really excited of, you know, seeing things. So Dragon's Lair, I mentioned, was what inspired me because I saw that was, you know, traditional animation and interactivity coming together. So that was really, really quite exciting, and that inspired me to move into the space. And I got to experience the pterodactyl. I don't know that pterodactyl thing back in the 90s, which was super exciting. But I could still see the level of frustration of the technology wasn't quite there yet. And obviously now I was lucky enough to work at Autodesk for 5 years, and I worked with James Cameron on Avatar, and I started to see then that we were getting to a point where these virtual spaces were going to become real. And I think, you know, this is a testament to being able to do that as well.
We work on Avatar.
We just had Alvin with a microphone, and he's gone again. Just keep flowing with it, Tom.
Okay, we'll go. Thank you, Daniel, for keeping us on track. Okay, well, this is wonderful. Let me tell you a little bit about what I wanted to be when I was a kid, which was a long time ago, actually. But I always wanted to be an engineer, but not the kind of engineer you guys think about. I wanted to drive trains. I mean, I was in love with trains. My grandfather was a station master, and I would hang out at the train station with all these old steam engines going by. And I said, wow, that would be nirvana to be able to drive a steam train. And so all over these years, you know, I went to another engineering direction in electrical engineering and things like that. And yeah, that was fun, but I always wanted to drive a train. And as it turns out, my wife, we were in England. I did my PhD in England, but we were there later on at a visit and for a sabbatical. And she made arrangements for me to go to a special school where I could learn to drive a steam train. And so I did. I learned how all the bits work. I learned how to oil it, go underneath it, under the fire case and everything, how to stoke it, and I actually got to drive it and do the sound of the horn, you know. And it was nirvana. It doesn't get any closer to that because you feel it. You feel the engine, feel the heat on your face and the wind in your sideburns. It was fantastic. But, you know, I only get to do that once. Now I have to go back to be another kind of engineer. Yeah. But that's all right, too, because I get to play virtual reality. So let's now go back and talk about, so why in the world do we even need to be thinking about virtual things? I mean, isn't the real good enough? Why would we even want to invent devices like this that takes us to another place? It puts a place inside of us. Why would that be important? So let's start off let's go to you first, and maybe you could give us your off-the-cuff feelings about why we want to play around with putting something in front of our eyes that takes us to another place.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, there's plenty of great examples. One of the best examples I probably have is the fabulous Daniel, who has set up with this and been such a passionate person around this. So Daniel and I first met in virtual reality, and we could have met normally in a virtual like a virtual chat room on 2D, but I think the fact that we actually met in the physical sense and we met with some great people and we had a bond that was actually generated between us in a space that's completely made up. And I think the big difference in trying to explain to people who haven't tried virtual reality that this is another reality. I don't think it's virtual. I think it's just another reality. And Daniel, I made Daniel jump on a plane and go over to AWE, and he never would have done that, I don't think, without actually sort of us meeting in virtual space.
Thanks for that, Joe.
Huge,
forever. Thank you.
No problem, man. Anytime. But that's the thing. It's that level of connection that is generated. There's an emotional sort of connection generated with presence. I mean, I'm lucky enough to be influencing the youth of tomorrow and getting these children to sort of experience this technology. I mean, I wish I was a kid right now. Like, that's the big thing for me. Is I've had disengaged Aboriginal children in Australia who were going to drop out of school, and they said school sucked and they hated it. And we put them into virtual environments, and they got to pull apart a car engine, and half of those students dove into automotive as a career. So there's all of these things where I see these opportunities, and being able to give people opportunities they'd never have a chance to do before. I mean, I've never been on the coast of Italy before, but I have now. So the other part for me is COVID has exposed the lack of I guess engagement you get from a traditional online. Everybody's so sick of Zoom. You're sitting there in front of a screen just looking blankly at something while you're trying to do emails and ignore the person that's being talking. But with virtual reality, no one else is checking their phone, no one else is doing stuff. Everyone's fully engaged, and I think that's the 100% engagement stuff that I try and harp on the most. That and the emotional impact is huge. But this is also the other side of the coin. So you are the grandfather of augmented reality, Tom. Just the other side of augmented reality. We're going to see persistent virtual environments invade our real world, and we've got to prepare for that. And I think VR gives us that preparation.
Okay, thanks for that, Joe. Well, let's move back over here to Alvin. Well, no, we won't move to Alvin. Bless his heart, he's having some problems swimming across. Yeah. But Paul, let's go to you now. And why this? Now, here you have all this new technology your company has just created, which is amazing stuff. I'm blown away by the quality of what and the feature set that you have. Now, why? So what? Why? Why would we want to mess around with this stuff?
Yeah, well, so the HP perspective, perhaps a little, everything you said, Joe, I completely resonate with and agree with that. The company perspective of HP is a little more commercially oriented, and the why for us in many cases is that you can do things in virtual environments or augmented environments much better or more safely or more effectively than you can in a real environment. And there's all sorts of examples in the markets we work in. So in the case of architecture, for example, you can create a building, and walk the client through the building before it's even made. You can simulate sound echoes and so forth. You can have real-time changing of the geometry of the building, based on the client's feedback. Things like that you just can't do in the real world. And if you look at, again, we're about commercial. If you look at the kind of the overall value chain of delivering something to an end customer, you can deliver a much better product more quickly and with a happier customer in a lot less time when you start employing like virtual and augmented technologies. So that's just one really simple example. There are other, in education, for example, there are. I was an EE as well, and I took electromagnetic fields, right? And I remember I had a really good teacher that knew how to draw really well, and I was very lucky because the abstract concepts there of magnetic fields and electrical fields are kind of just difficult to grasp. If you look at some of the work that Scott Greenwald and other people have been doing in terms of bringing those into virtual reality to help you envision and internalize those kind of concepts, it's hugely efficacious. So, I think it's not necessarily we're trying to recreate what's around us necessarily, and you can do that as well, and you can do a good job of that. But the things you can't do in real life are the things where VR really shines at this point, for us anyway. So.
Well, I certainly resonate with this idea of teaching electromagnetic fields in VR because I struggle with it as well. As a matter of fact, one of the tests I took, one of my midterm tests, I made a 16 on it out of 100. And it was the highest grade in the class. And so, and we're teaching this with tensor calculus, and we didn't have a clue what was going on. But I've always been a person who needs to visualize things. But think of the divergence and curl meter you could take with you into a virtual electromagnetic field. It would make all the difference in our understanding of these kind of complex principles. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go to Rylan now. Rylan, so why, you of course, you're a digital native. You've always grown up when computers were around. But why is this different? Why is this important to be doing what we're doing?
Yeah, so I think the world needs VR because the world is changing. And, fundamentally, we need virtual reality because real reality is changing. And I think that we have to find ways as humanity to catch up with the real world and evolve with it. And I think, fundamentally with both the changing environment as well as with changing global circumstances in terms of the pandemic and related changes, I think that VR will actually save us all. And I think that when we've all been at home for extended periods of time, that in many ways has been an attempt to save humanity by, first of all, avoid disease, but it's also actually statistically dramatically reduced the CO2 emissions into the atmosphere and, been some small way to tackle climate change. And I think that VR and AR technology, I think, I try to think of why specifically VR, AR technology, because I think that there are a lot of technologies that could possibly save the world. There's AI, which has been researched for so long. There's the blockchain and so many epic, amazing technologies that I know are going to totally transform the world. But I think the question is, what's going to actually make the biggest impact in changing the world? And I think that VR, AR is the technology that will specifically do that, because it lets us really adjust more easily and evolve more easily with any changing circumstances in real reality. And I think VR, AR is a technology that compared to, say, AI or blockchain, has incredible features to it that are built into it as part of the technology. So it sort of is an amazing interdisciplinary combination of the best advantages of real reality, which has some form of social connection and sort of the feeling that you are in a realistic looking environment, even if it isn't literally a physical environment. It's sort of like we're all together here right now. And it does in some sense it really enables people to continue many aspects of normal society and work conditions and school and stuff like that. And I think there are also incredible affordances of a virtual world in itself. Not only can you avoid risk of disease, but there's also no traffic. You don't actually have to drive to work or school. I think that VR AR is such an important technology, and I think that what excites me the most is that the recent changing world is almost a justification that VR AR should be implemented at massive scale, because I think now that many of us have significant experience in existing and collaborating and really making our own worldly changes inside of VR and AR worlds. I think that is the future, really, especially as the world is going to change over and over exponentially throughout the future, and VR AR will help us evolve towards that future.
Okay, wow, that's the heartfelt exposition, I think, Rylan, and appreciate that. Now, let's have a little bit of fun here. Probably all of you remember the first time you had a virtual reality experience, the first time you put on a headset, and it changed your life, or maybe it didn't change your life. But what was that like? See, Daniel, did you raise your hand, or you just
saying that I remember it very clearly? That was all. I remember it clearly.
Okay, well, tell us what it was.
Okay. It was a mobile phone-based VR with a plastic headset. The guy who sold it to me, I didn't know anything about it. I thought he'd ripped me off. I took it home and there was no processor in it. And I realized I had to put my phone in it, and then I figured out there was an app to go with it. And I tried the first experience I could try, and it was the International Space Station. And it blew my mind that my phone had convinced my brain that I was looking around the International Space Station, and that was it for me. I just needed to know everything about it. That was me.
Fantastic. So, Caitlin, tell us about what your first experience was like in VR.
Well, it's an interesting, I feel like I'm one of those people that can't remember my first experience because it's been so immersive for me that it kind of blends together with a lot of them. But I remember, I remember going to a VR lab, must have been a long time ago, and just experiencing that feeling of magic, and then remembering growing up always loving to be inside of places that are fully immersive, whether it's looking through one of those devices with the it's like stereoscopic lenses have always interested me in photography. So I'm sure that in VR I was just equally animated, and I had about, I don't know, maybe 100 different experiences in VR as soon as I discovered it. Yeah, doing the underwater whale was one of the first ones too, and seeing the whale move beside me, I felt very much like I was there in the water. Yeah.
How many of you had that experience of the into the blue with the whale? Isn't that amazing? Oh gosh, it just takes you away. Well, how about you, Manga? What was your first experience like?
It was one of the original when the Rift just started coming out, and somebody put the headset on me, and it had this holographic kind of cubes that you had to fly through. So it was right in the beginning, and it was amazing. And I think the next one I saw was actually the lab, where you could go in and do all the experiences with the Vive, which totally convinced me I needed to get into VR.
How about your partner there, Chris? Chris, you've got to have a story about this.
Well, my first head-mounted display virtual reality experience was with the DK1 Oculus Developer Kit. There was a series of things I did that night in my basement. Just got my kit, excited, plugging it in, getting it set up. I did a program called Greebles. And it really showed the massive scale as you're flying through these discs and squares, and there's flying fish. And I think I pretty much spent like 4 hours just watching that over and over again, laying on the ground, going through it backwards, going through it forwards, just absolutely. And, it was those first series of experiments there. I told my wife very early on, I said, I'm changing careers, 20 years of behavioral science, and now I'm going VR all the way, because I could very clearly see how that was going to change and impact society, the way we learn, the way we socialize, the way we entertain. It's going to change everything.
Thank you for that. Most of us have had the experience now, of course, not only having our first experience. I'm sure panelists have stories that tell about that too, but also just how sacred it is to put a headset on another individual for the first time. For them to have that revelation of wow. To me, that's one of the biggest things that happens. And Caitlin has written about this in her book, Designing Wonder, about the wow factor, the wonder factor. I mean, when I put a headset on, I become a kid again. And my mouth drops open and I can say, wow. So wonder, it's a wonder generator, or wonder delivery mechanism. I don't know, whatever we want to call it. But certainly you can hear more about that. And Caitlin, you're having an event on Sunday, I believe, about this. And
that's true. It's part of the. Oh, thanks. It's part of the Univirtual series. So it's on Sunday at 4:00 Pacific. This topic of wonder and also awe. I think. Well, I didn't mention it, but probably my mouth dropped open in a huge O when I was in VR first time, and they say that some scientists are saying that's a sign that your physical body is really open and you're in this state of wonder and awe. In VR you can be even more plastic about your adaptation, and even more you have a higher threshold for what you're able to experience. So it can be really powerful for overcoming obstacles. So we're going to play with wonder and awe in the session at 4:00 on Sunday, and just talk a little more about the ways that VR encourages that sense of, like you said at the beginning, Tom, that lifelong play and experience design. So yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. So it's really fun to think about that. Does anybody else want to talk about your experience? In personal experience. Paul, you have one?
Yeah, and actually, I remember my first experience was actually with the Vive, and it probably was the Blue. But the more recent experience I had was, people mentioned putting the headset on other people and watching them express that wonder and awe. And I have a friend whose father was 96 years old, living in assisted living, along with a bunch of other folks, and we had a birthday party for him. And for the party, I brought some gear to let them try VR. None of them had ever tried VR before, and the sense of awe on all of their faces, and I did the Blue with them because it's an easy one and kind of familiar in terms of archetypes. And to a person, everybody was just blown away, and people were reaching for the fish, and just things they had never done in their lives. In some cases, they were able to do, and that was amazing. That was probably my favorite moment in VR, to be honest. So.
Wow. Yeah. Any others?
Yeah. So Tom, I was say I had an amazing. I mean, as I mentioned before, I tried the pterodactyl experience back in '96, which, to be honest, completely awful, because it was at a bar and I had to drink 2 drinks before I was allowed to try it. I was already half. And the frame rate of that thing was awful, so it made me sick. But I still wanted to go back and try it again. But the recent experience I had, which was putting a headset on someone else, was a quadriplegic student. And he was just blown away because he could do things he couldn't do before. So like being able to sort of walk, or being able to be moved around the space. We're looking at him next to use a brain computer interface so he can actually interact with the world using his mind.
Wow.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's the stuff that for me, you know, my first experience, as most of the professionals here, we've done so much VR, so it becomes a little bit harder to have that wow moment over and over again. But being able to put on someone else's face and see, as you said, see their face light up the first time that they get into a virtual experience is phenomenal. And also making it pleasant. That's a really important thing. I don't like seeing people being put into the plank or something where they get scared and think. I think that's a bad sort of practice of people doing that.
Well, yeah, fantastic. Well, let me tell you, and just spare a minute or so, what it was like for me to be in the first VR that I had actually made. And I didn't know what I was making at the time. I just knew it was going to be different. And my job was I was designing fighter cockpits for the U.S. Air Force. And flying in the fighters, I was testing a number of these pieces of equipment because we had a difficult time getting bandwidth to and from the brain using all the instruments that you normally have in a cockpit. 75 displays, 300 switches, 11 switches on the control stick, 9 switches on your throttle, flying twice the speed of sound, pulling G to the boundaries of consciousness. Anyhow, it was clear that we weren't getting there. It was broken, the design of these fighters, because it was just so complex. It took hours and hours and hours of training to be able to operate it. But one of the things we're trying to do is a paradigm shift. How do we convey information to the human? And this is where we started building cockpit that you wear with a headset that would take the instrumentation that you normally have in the cockpit and project it out as a three-dimensional circumambience of information that's superimposed over the real world. Oh, here we are. We're in the sky already, flying. Thank you, Daniel, for that. And so what I did, and one of the things we wanted to do is just prove how good does this virtual cockpit have to be in order to make it useful. So we built what we called a VCAS, a Visually Coupled Airborne Systems Simulator, which was this bug-eyed helmet. You've probably seen it. But it generated 120-degree instantaneous field of view and in 3D, and we're using miniature cathode ray tubes to do that. Miniature tubes about 1 inch in diameter that had a lot of resolution and had a lot of luminance. And as a matter of fact, the display electronics to drive these things required water cooling to do it. This was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and the year was about 79 to 80 when we actually put all these pieces together. There were 8 VAX computers, 2 Evans and Sutherland picture systems, 2 more PDP-11s in order to power this thing. We had 3D sound, we had eye tracking, we had all of these speech input, all of these things. This is a 1981 to 1985 time period. And so the big day came that we were going to switch this on, do the smoke test. And I was sitting in the cockpit in a cockpit simulator, lowered this helmet over my head because it weighed 10 pounds. And it had a negator spring assembly. It kept the weight of the helmet from making your head go down like that. So we balanced it. Most of the weight was suspended, but you still had that rotational mass, the momentum that came from it. And so then we switched on all the computers. This picture opened up to me, this panoramic scene that was amazing. It's like somebody had reached out of that computer world and grabbed me and pulled me inside. And now I wasn't looking at a picture anymore. I was in a place. And I about peed in my pants. This took my breath away. And actually, I started crying because I said, this is unbelievable. And at that moment, I started thinking about, oh my goodness, what have we done? What have we created? And what implications are of this in terms of changing the whole way we interact with computers, the whole way we interact with complexity, the whole way we interact with 3D. And it changed my life forever. And here I am. I can't let it go. So that was my first experience. And then when I saw the blue, I cried again, because that helmet didn't cost $1 million. That's how much it cost, by the way, this helmet I was wearing, not counting all the other computers that were out there. This helmet cost a lot less than that. And what I saw was just breathtaking in terms of being beautiful. And again, something I would never forget. So, so we've all had experiences. And we all have this feeling, I think, for why we're doing it. It's not whimsical. It's not we're doing it because we can do it. It's because we now realize the importance of doing it. It's like Joe was saying with what he's been able to do with his students. And all of us who have had that opportunity to teach with this kind of technology. But now let's get down to business. Really what this panel is about. I wanted to use this as a setting, a backdrop. So now let's look at, okay, so how are we doing? What's our report card?
Can I just interrupt you very briefly? We have Alvin in the house just for a moment. Should we just say hello to Alvin there while he's here? He's tried again to come back. Hey, Alvin, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad you can finally be here
Hey
with
guys,
us again.
sorry, I'm just having a lot of network.
Oh, sad.
Well, we managed to say hello. There you go. We managed to. He acknowledged us. We acknowledged him. Yeah. I think he's written an email saying he's trying, but we should understand it's just a bit difficult today. So keep going, Thompson. Sorry.
Well, Alvin, just so you know, Alvin is the president of HTC China, and is certainly a spokesperson, a pioneer in virtual reality as well. And as a matter of fact, he was one of my students in 1991. And that's what got him started into this VR situation at that time. So what we want to do now is switch gears a little bit. And as I mentioned, let's sort of come up with a feeling for where we stand now. Let's give ourselves a report card. And Rylan, let's start with you. Now you can tell us any way you want to what you want to judge this report card by. Give us a grade, how we're doing so far, and different aspects of the technology and the environments of applications and things like that.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think I'm actually extremely excited about the evolution of VR AR. I think already today, like the fact that we're able to have this panel with all of you is just such an incredible miracle, because I think that social connection is one of the most profound and just incredible applications of VR technology. And so that definitely scores high on the report card. Now, I think I think that there are certain things that could be made better with VR. I think that one of them is accessibility, in terms of trying to get it into the hands of more people, and again, sort of lowering the prices, and also I think the other major thing is really finding creative new applications for VR and AR that would really make VR AR a critical aspect of many people's lives. I think that today VR AR, while it definitely has increased exponentially across almost every industry that you can think of, from a healthcare to education to the enterprise, I think that there's still a ways to go, and I think that the technology is still being used in very niche situations. And even, for example, if you're a frontline worker and you use VR or AR as your use the tech during work, perhaps you just use it for a simple use case, but you still depend on like perhaps a phone or a laptop or something to go about your day. And I think that what could be really exciting is if VR AR becomes sort of the default technology that we use for everything. But you see, in order to do that, it really has to be better at current popular technologies to do that. And I think the beauty of VR AR is that when VR AR becomes democratized to the masses, it also democratizes a certain solutions that really connect the world. And sort of how I was hinting at earlier, I think the democratization of VR AR is incredibly important to the future of humanity in the changing world that we live in, because it is going to help humanity navigate an evolving world, in a world of climate change and other crises that perhaps we just can't predict yet. And I think VR AR allows us to really create our own world and really imagine, what could the future look like? And I think that many people here in the audience are perhaps the VR AR developers or VR AR creators, and I think the more innovation and just inspiring ingenuity that we have when it comes to VR AR, the more that we can really not only evolve VR and AR, but really enhance humanity for the better by really democratizing these incredible use cases.
Well, I want to pin you down though. Okay, what is the one thing that you think we need to work on in terms of the hardware technology?
Yeah, it's a good question.
That we need to think. What is the one thing, just one thing, specifically?
Yeah, sure. So I think that currently in the industry, there's like I was saying, the VR AR is currently only being used for very specific situations. And part of the reason for that is not only because the use cases are still sort of limited, but I think just the ergonomics and the usability of VR AR is still not quite on par with other regular computers. And I think that just being able to increase the comfort of a VR AR and make it so that can really become a critical aspect of everyone's lives will be really essential to democratizing it to the masses.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. So, my brethren to the left here, Joe, what do you think? What kind of report card would you give us?
I'd probably say a solid B at this stage. There's definitely the momentum that's happened is amazing, but I think that a lot of areas where we've failed or over-indexed. The big struggle I have for me is probably, while Oculus has done an amazing job from a democratization of the availability from a cost perspective, it's set an unrealistic expectation for someone to buy a $500 headset or $399 US or whatever, and be able to have something that's able to be deployed on scale and en masse. Like, Mark Zuckerberg has this plan to have 1 billion headsets, but is that 1 billion headsets that are going to be able to be utilized in a scalable way and have the ability for, say, a school to be able to implement that? And that's one area where definitely that is not the case at the moment. So, I mean, I've spoken to nearly every university in the US and Australia, and being able to deploy the headsets, on scale at the moment is impossible. And that's regardless of headset, regardless of the software still not quite there. And I see education being, paramount for most people's first experiences will either be in the workplace or in an education institute for virtual reality. And it's got to be that seamless, frictionless experience. And I think, Ryland's completely right in the whole ergonomics part of things as well. At the moment, you're basically wearing a toaster on your face, and it's completely, unrealistic to be able to spend all day in virtual reality. I mean, I've done it, but it wasn't particularly comfortable. But I definitely think the software side of things, we're getting there. I mean, obviously, graphics will continue to improve, and biometrics coming with HP and stuff is fantastic. There's really interesting things that are happening, but I think the fundamentals of being able to have 30 people, or even Engage, for example, being able to have it so this stuff is like turnkey and bulletproof is probably a huge thing. I mean, Chris has done a fantastic job, and this is some of the best experiences I've had in social VR has been inside Engage, just because of the flexibility of this platform. But I think there's still a long way to go, and I think there's a lot more investment that needs to go into the space. And I'd be keen to see more people look at organisations like Chris's and investing in those large organisations actually understanding the power of this. But I still think it's still seen as a gimmick at the moment for most executives. They still see it as, it's great for sometimes, but not for always, as opposed to we could teach everything in this space, or probably 80% of the courses we have in TAFE in virtual reality, and the costs would be reduced. Just resources. I mean, being able to, not have to every single time you teach someone about an engine, a student breaks an engine, like that's usually the path of the course at the moment. But if we could actually sort of get them across the fundamentals first in virtual spaces, saving money for the organization, but then also giving the students an engaging experience, I think is huge. But we're not quite there yet.
Paul, what you make these things?
We try, yeah.
What do you see as the biggest grade? What would you give us a grade first? How you think we're doing?
Hard to grade. I think we're actually doing pretty amazing as an industry. Progress in terms of both the technology and the adoption of the technology has been huge and getting very hockey stickish these days, which is excellent to see. I'm not a big grader, but I think we're doing pretty damn well, actually. A long way to go, but I think everybody knows that, and they're in for the long term. In terms of the one thing, I guess I'd challenge the question. I don't think one thing's going to make it omnipresent. I think it's more of an and gate, if you will. And I think there's quite a few things that need to get solved in order to make it, everybody on the planet wanting to put on a VR headset on a daily basis. I think the general concept of immersion, which includes, obviously the visual aspects that have been improving so dramatically, also audio, but the whole haptic area is something that's really not been solved or even close to solved at this point. In some cases, in some vocational aspects, people are using welding tools, things like that. But in order to grab something and really feel it, as part of the training or educational exercise, is still pretty, is not there, in my opinion. There's that. There's the other senses as well. I think olfactory is less important. Joe and I were talking about that ahead of the meeting, but still an important part, a huge stimulator of long-term memory, right? So an important part of the immersion thing. So, on the input side of immersion, I think we've identified, what we need to do, and we're making better progress in some areas, not so good in other areas. On the output side, if you will, and this is, what we've been working on at HP with the OmniSet platform, being able to measure the response of the person in the VR experience and use that effectively in, what in days of yore would be called the biofeedback loop, to modify the experience or make the person more comfortable or whatever you would like to do. I think that's a huge area of opportunity. We have some basic sensors on the Reverb Gen 2 Omnicept right now. There's so much more that can be done. Right now we have a mouth cam, we have pupillometry, eye tracking, and we have PPG for heart rate. But you can be looking at EMG, you can be looking at EEG and other senses and GSR and so forth. So I think that whole end of things, there's a huge amount of work that's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years there. And then finally, on the form factor, so the whole friction thing, I mean, even with an Oculus Quest 2, it's pretty damn good, I got to say. But even that, there's enough friction in getting things loaded, having a Facebook login, all this kind of stuff that just gets in the way, that is enough of a barrier to prevent some people from using it on a daily basis. I would style form factor, and I think it needs to be super light. It has to, I think there's going to be a merge of AR and VR into a common device. And I think when that happens, those things happen, I think the sky's the limit at that point. And I think, to Ryland's point, that will be the device that could democratize immersive reality across the planet, basically. So anyway, that's a quick thought.
Well, thanks for that.
Tom, just a little heads up. Loving your conversation. I don't want the sun to set. I'm not going to let the sun set on us. Just a heads up, it's about 10 past the hour. So
yes, thank you.
I'll be staying, but just for you to know.
Okay. Well, it is a book for an hour and a half. Maybe.
This is true. My bad. My bad.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay. Just want to make sure that you okay. We're getting to the grand conclusion. Okay. Welcome back, Joe. We missed you for a little bit there. So let's take another approach here. Besides the grading thing, and thank you, Paul, for saying there's not one grade we could probably give ourselves, but I want to mention one thing that I am concerned about, and that is the first rule that we should have in our manifesto is to do no harm. And at this point, we don't have a clue what's going to happen with individuals who use this every day, week after week after week, year after year after year, in terms of how it alters the way that we work with the real world. So this is something, if I were going to give us a grade, or let me say, no, I'm not going to use that term. If I had, a grant of $100 million, that's what I would work on, is to make sure we understand exactly what's going on in terms of these things that are happening to us as we start embracing this new technology. Now, I'm going to start with you again, Paul, and ask you what you would do with $100 million. If you had $100 million in your organization to do something, what would that be?
And I can't invest it in Dogecoin, probably. I'm guessing no.
You have to spend it. You have to spend it again.
Yeah. That's a really good question, because we ask those kind of questions a lot internally to HP. What kind of budget do we have? How do we want to spend it? We have to justify pretty much everything we do. To me, getting to the low friction, easy to use, democratized device that Ryland described as soon as possible. Oops, we have a subterranean here. Is getting there as fast as possible is very important, I think, because now your preamble for this though is, do we know what this is going to do to people with long-term usage, right? I'm not even sure we have acknowledged what staring at a computer screen in Zoom all day long does to a person, both physiologically in terms of lack of change of focal distance, for example, but also in terms of brain impact and so forth. And you can talk about cell phones and other technology as well. But you're right. I mean, do no harm. VR and AR could be the first kind of collection of technologies where we really do a thoughtful look at what the impact's going to be on individuals and humanity overall as well. So yeah, of that $100 million, I would probably spend 20% of that maybe looking at studies of long-term impacts. I know there's been some of that done, especially with younger users. And at one point, we came to the conclusion that around 13 or 14 was kind of the entry age for things. But I guess I would spend 20% of that budget on that, and the rest, I would really we need to get to the devices that everybody can wear and are cheap enough to be purchased by everybody, in my opinion. So.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So you probably didn't hear the question, Joe. But what would you do?
No, I got it.
You got it. You got it. Okay, you have $100 million. How'd you spend it?
Yeah, and the Dogecoin thing I think is definitely poignant, but Hedera Hashgraph is actually a better investment because it's less impactful on the environment. But yeah, in the VR space, I definitely think for me, children for me is really important. I think that's a big area for mine where understanding the brains, especially when the mind's so plastic at the stage. So I definitely think investing in how because while we can say 13 is the ideal state, we know what children are like with technology. They're early adopters and they tend to they're more efficient with it as well. So for mine, it's this point of, okay, what is safe for who, and what is that, what
Oh, we gave him in mid-sentence again.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's turn to Rylan. Rylan, you have $100 million. What are you going to do with it?
You need to unmute there, Rylan.
Yeah, you're muted, Rylan.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Well, first of all, wow, $100,000. I feel so rich. but I mean, after some initial attempts with Dogecoin, I think what would be really cool with the VR AR community is, what I observe is this kind of movement that I'm observing of like all these social platforms that are coming out on all sorts of devices. And, obviously there's stuff like Engage and VR chat and AltSpace, but even some new entrants like Gorilla Tag, for example. And I think just these new ways and like new use cases that are emerging, particularly the social ones, I think are probably one of the most critical ways to make an impact on lots of people with VR and AR. And I think that figuring out these cool applications to, like, even in this changing world, as I was talking about earlier, to find ways to really evolve humanity along with the world. I think that these social applications are one of the critical ways to achieve that. And I think that would be a wonderful direction, a truly wonderful direction. I mean, again, it's just so cool that we can have this virtual experience all together in Engage. And I think just enabling even more of that and really pushing that to the boundaries, I think that's going to be so transformative for the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Rylan. So, Joe, you're back.
Sorry, I lost you, Tom. Yeah. So the other point I was going to make is content for me, huge. And not only, I mean, like having great education content. There's some amazing stuff coming out now. We do pretty awesome content, and there's a bunch of people doing great stuff. But it's having those building blocks, because I've seen so much bad VR where people have overinvested. They haven't understood the principles of what really good VR is. And if I could give those people the building blocks and give them all the frameworks that they need to really quickly get into developing good content is important. And then the other part is non-technical authoring. I want, you know, the electronics teacher or the automotive teacher to be able to build their own world in half an hour and have a class ready and be able to do it before class starts, and they feel like they're experts, because that's the biggest challenge at the moment. The people that haven't tried virtual reality are scared of the technology. You know, it's so new and so different. If they struggle to use their phone, they're not going to be, you know, they'll feel like this is a leap too far, and I don't really think it is. I think it's actually easier than using most computers.
Well, thanks. Okay, I'm going to one more question, and then we want to open it up to the audience for questions that you may want to ask. But if you, let's look far into the future. Let's look at another 20 years from now. Paul, what kind of virtual world would you like to see? A dream virtual world, 20 years out. A few sentences.
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I'm not, I'll be honest, I'm not sure what kind of virtual world I want to see. I know some of the characteristics of it in terms of the immersiveness that I'd like to see, but, you know, I know what kind I don't want to see. And if you've seen the hyper reality kind of video, which is an AR experience, and Ready Player One, I mean, you know, happy ending, but pretty dystopic in the interim, right? So I think a world where people are free to really, you know, more of a Star Trek world where, you know, you don't have to worry about sustenance or, you know, putting food on the table or things like that, but a world where you can just explore and let your mind, you know, be creative and, you know, kind of utopic, I guess, really. That kind of a world, and but completely immersive, and, you know, back to the original, the paper from Ivan, you know, that kind of a world where you believe you're in it, the holodeck essentially. But, you know, a world that people are allowed to be themselves, they're allowed to be creative and free, and aren't dragged down by the kind of the difficulties of normal life. And it might be escapist, but I think that can have some real value for people. So, I don't know. That's the thought.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
So, Rylan?
Yeah, sure. I think that the best, or not the best, but like I think a really cool VR world that I'd like to see is one that really links people in a very uplifting and transformative way. And what I mean by that is somewhere in between the ultimate metaverse that we've seen in the likes of Ready Player One and engage in VR chat, but also a sense of like like a personal existence and, you know, freedom of expression, and sort of finding that balance between your own personal avatar and identity, as well as being able to engage with the community at large. And I think that you know, having a canvas of creativity that can extend to infinite dimensions that really could enable people to express themselves in ways that might currently be impossible in real reality would be so nice. And I think that once we create this medium for ultimate creative expression, I think that will have a great chance at creating a better world. Because if the tools are there and the people are there to use those tools and make awesome, amazing things that can just change the world for the better, I think we have a chance at bringing humanity to just mega levels, to just ultra levels, the top level, and I think that Yeah, exactly. It's sort of going to the moon, right? But I think that you know, if we can do that, and I'm not saying that it'll be easy to really create a better world, but I think that if we can sort of imagine what a better world could look like, one without climate change, without out of control pandemics, without all the things that have changed the world, I think that we can change the world in a new direction, and one that is actually inspiring and uplifting and really exciting, that will really energize us to explore new directions that we just haven't seen before. And I think VR AR is the real enabler that will let people create this amazing place to be. It'll just be an amazing place to be.
Hey, Tom. I wanted to add one other quick thing. You said a world. I guess I'd like to augment my answer, which is I think we should not have a world. There, much like in portrayed in Ready Player One, I think there's all sorts of opportunities for multiple worlds, and people go where they want or create worlds they want to be in and so forth. So yeah, just that addition.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Okay, well, we're sort of running out of time here, but I want to. There's actually a homework assignment I want to give you. If we have time left, we'll answer some questions. But that homework assignment is I would like to call Daniel, if you'd come up front here. I want you to do an experiment.
I'm ready. Yep.
Okay, Daniel, come up closer here.
Okay. All right.
All right, now, a few weeks ago, Daniel and I, we have this playtime together. That's when we basically get together for an hour and a half, just play in VR. Well, one of the times we decided, actually, Daniel got me into this, we downloaded Multibrush. Now, how many of you actually played with Multibrush yet? Okay, Multibrush is like a tilt brush, but for multiple people. Only you have all these kind of tools where you can create together. So Daniel and I went into Multibrush World, and we were actually playing with each other. Daniel was doing some things, I was doing some things. We're connecting these things together, right, Daniel? And he was making some cool art. I was doing some cool art with our different tools and things like that. And then we did something. I went to the plasma tool, and what I did was I drew, he's doing it. I drew a plasma beam from my chest to his chest. And then what he did was he drew a helix. You see this helix here? So there was the plasma beam, and then there was the beam between there, okay? We did this, and this profound feeling came.
I can feel it now, Tom.
I can too. I started heating up. My chest started feeling full.
Yep.
And Daniel said, "Did you feel that?" And I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" We knew this was virtual. We're separated by thousands of miles, and yet there was something connecting us. We made visible the fact that we were connected to each other. Now, a few weeks after that, we did the same thing, Ryla, right? And what happened when we did that? What did you feel?
We had some quantum entanglement by feeling connected throughout a virtual space, which really used VR as a portal to connect our physical spaces.
Yeah. I can't explain it, guys. I mean, it's like we stumbled on something by accident, but it is so profound. You try it out.
A heart connection.
It is.
Yeah.
And so go home, find someone that you want to connect with, and do this.
Try this.
It's
something
amazing.
Like this. Yeah. All right.
Try this. Okay. Thanks for that. Now,
thank you, Tom.
We have just a few minutes left. I'm going to sit down, physically sit down. And let's have just a couple of questions. We have about 4 minutes left, but we have such an amazing panel here. Just just a question. Let's have a question from the audience, and then you guys will give a chance to sum up what you want to say to the audience. So, anyone have a question?
Sure. I have
Okay, Chris.
a simple question. I'm curious. You know, we're all in the VR field. What looking over say the last 30 days, what has been one of your favorite things to do in VR when you're not indulging in work for your leisure time? Any comments there?
Panels? You
Um, I'll jump in real quickly. Actually, I've given presentations on kind of the history and current and present and future of VR to a bunch of HP and external folks that don't know anything about VR. And the responses I get are pretty phenomenal typically. So it's not actually being in VR, but talking about VR has been a lot of fun for me in the last 30 days. So that's my answer. So.
How about you,
I have
Joe?
a regular card game. I have a regular card game with friends that I don't get to. I live in a small country town now. All of my friends are in Sydney, and being able to actually sit there and play cards, we could do it, probably on a computer game or something on a 2D screen, but actually being together, and we all have our real beers that sort of sit next to us in the virtual space. That's always fun. That's always fun.
Poker VR, Joe, is that the app you're using for that?
Yeah.
Great.
Right.
Yeah. How about Eddie?
Yeah.
Do you want to answer that as well?
Yeah, of course. I'd love to. I going virtually swimming inside of VR with other people, and it's so great because I think that many applications are either like talking or having some kind of social connection, but when you can really do experiences that wouldn't perhaps require you to go to the physical location, but actually really uplift you. And by the way, it is not just swimming in water. You can like swim in like outer space and like swim in all these fantastical virtual environments, and that's just such a enjoyable thing, and it's just so fun to do with people. Like
Do the
this,
breaststroke?
kind of swimming around like this, and we're swimming across the galaxy.
Right.
Just
Okay.
keep swimming.
Well, we're about out of time. I'd really love to just spend another 30 minutes answering questions and chatting, getting your ideas. But I think that we better sign off. Daniel has got to be crashing on us here.
Not for me. No, don't stop for me. I got the time wrong. I could stay here happily. But I know that Chris mentioned an idea, a wonderful idea. So when we are ready to kind of end this part of the session, Chris has a little something as an experience to kind of finish off. So let's not rush it, but when we are ready, I think there's a nice treat for us.
Okay, well, let's do this. Let's we definitely want to have the treat.
Mm-hmm.
Every treat that Chris provides is amazing. It's like eating cotton candy over again. But so why don't we have a last sum up from our panelists? And Joe, why don't we start with you? Just any last parting words you'd like to say?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess I missed out on saying what I thought 20 years would look like. For me, like my goal is to change how education works, but also I think that the whole augmented virtual reality thing is going to be completely oblivious. It'll be the same technology in a very short period. And the goal, being able to seamlessly switch between mediums, I think is going to be the ultimate goal. And I think, we're all on a journey on this, and we're doing a great job so far. I mean, Paul mentioned that we're doing a fantastic job. And I think, more of these gatherings and having, esteemed colleagues like Tom here who, started this stuff, and that experience you shared was amazing. But I think, it's just the beginning. And then we've got someone like Rylan who's going to change the future for us. I think that's really exciting for me. And I'm, more than happy to connect with anyone here to continue that conversation.
Fantastic. Thanks, dude. And Paul? Summing up.
Yeah. So, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been excellent. It's been really a pleasure to meet everybody and have the discussion. It's been eye-opening, really. I'm really excited about probably the next 5 years. I think there's going to be tremendous change. And Joe, you mentioned AR and VR merge coming up. I think that will happen within 5 years, and it will be very high quality. And I'm guessing it'll be pretty pricey initially, but things will come down, and I think it's going to unleash a whole series of new experiences, including education, as you're obviously very, very focused on, and I think in commercial world as well, it's going to be amazing. So next 5 years are going to be pivotal, I think. So.
Mylan?
Yes. So I think I'd like to close with this final thought, which is VR is one of the most exciting technologies ever. And it has the ultimate potential to change the world. And while it could, and I hope it will, save the world, it could possibly go the other way as well. And it all depends on good usage of VR. And I think if we in the community implement the right the right privacy ideas in VR, as well as the use cases and the new rules that can really uplift humanity, I think there is amazing hope for the future, and I'm so excited to see what will happen. For example, when the internet was coming out, it was a totally Wild West area where, all sorts of things were happening. And now, for example, in all sorts of social media, there are, over time, adopted cultures around how the internet technologies are used. And while there is amazing, great content out there, there are also those that might use the internet for things that maybe would not uplift humanity. You look at all sorts of hacking and all sorts of sort of negative outcomes of the internet that sort of coexist with the amazing positive outcomes. And so I think, sort of to go to an amazing positive future with VR AR is going to possibly uplift humanity to just ways that we have never seen before. I mean, it is the combination of amazing technology and an amazing community, like all of you here in the audience, that are really going to make incredible innovations in the technology. And I think if it's also responsibly used and used for good, if we use the technology for good, we can really change the world for the better and really make an amazing place for humanity to coexist together.
Well said.
Well said.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists. This has been wonderful. I mean, we'll do this again, and we'll hopefully have all of our audience with us again to kick these things around. It's been a delight to be here. So let's turn our hands and hearts over to Chris, and thank you, Daniel, for being with us. And
my pleasure. Just before we go on with Chris, you mind if I say some closing remarks?
Go ahead.
Lovely. Thank you. So, thank you to Rylan, to Tom, to Joe, to Paul, and to Alvin, who's been trying in the background to join us. It seems to be something with his home network. Thank you to Chris, always, for helping to host. But this has been another Univirtual Experience event in partnership with the Virtual World Society and Educators in VR. And again, thank you to our sponsors, HP, to Engage, and to Avantis Education, as well as Tony Cube Studios for filming, the VR Lady, Donna McTaggart, our event director, Grove XR, our videographers, Frame VR, LearnBright, without whom events like this are much more difficult to pull off and certainly wouldn't be happening for free. So our 150 events this month, again, it's a completely free conference, which we're very honored to be able to share, and to have guests like you contribute in the way you're doing it. It's really, really powerful. So thank you very much. Over to you, Chris.